what's up guys, Jake Verdon Tech here, back with another video. And as you can see from that intro, today I went and picked up the Canon EOS RP. So I've been in the market for a second camera to complement my Canon EOS R for a couple months now, but today I finally pulled the trigger and went with the Canon EOS RP. So the reason for a secondary camera is I really love my Canon EOS R, and that camera served me really well, and it's going to continue to serve me well on the channel. I've really just wanted a second camera to help out with the filming for the channel. So if I'm working on like a PC build or anything that I'm working on, a secondary camera can always come in handy. And if I'm filming any videos dealing with video production and camera stuff, obviously it's really hard to film if you only have one camera. So having a second camera can really come in handy for that kind of stuff. So why exactly did I go with the Canon EOS RP? And I really just love my Canon EOS R. That has been a phenomenal camera. I've been shooting on it for probably a little over a year now, and I wanted something that would complement it very well as far as image quality goes. But I wasn't ready to buy something even more high performance than the EOS R, like the R6, and definitely not the R5 for me. But in the RP really checked off a lot of boxes for me, and it came in at a really reasonable price compared to other stuff on the market. I was really tempted to go and try and find a camera that was in my price range that had 1080p at 120 FPS, but I know there's options out there that does have that, but most of them are going to be from Sony. And Canon's other offering that is around the same price point as this camera is the Canon M6 Mark II, which really looks like a great camera, but I ended up going the RP route mainly for the image quality, having a full frame sensor, having the RF mount because I do have one other RF lens that can be used on this camera, and overall I really just like the pros of going full frame. So in this video I really want to highlight some of the details of why the Canon EOS RP might be one of the best cameras for the money going into 2021. So I feel like this is a really great camera for somebody that's looking to just get started in photography or making videos for YouTube, stuff like that, or someone that's also just looking to upgrade from their current camera that they're running. So talking about some of the specs of this camera, and in fact I'm filming on it right now with the kit lens, which is the 24-105 STM. So this is the model where it's f4 to f7.1. So right now we're filming at 24mm f4, and it's a pretty decent image. It's a little bit, you can definitely tell it's different from the other lenses that I have that shoot at like f2.8 and f1.4, but overall the image looks really good and very comparable to the EOS R with some of those other lenses. So on to the specs. As far as from a photography standpoint, you're looking at a 26.2 megapixel sensor, and when talking about high speed repetitive shooting like burst modes and stuff like that, you're looking at 5 FPS or 4 FPS continuous. And like I mentioned, this does have a full frame CMOS sensor, and full frame is really going to get you a better image quality, higher dynamic range, better performance in low light scenarios, and any lens you put on it is going to have a true focal length and a true aperture, so you won't get that crop factor unless you're shooting in a 4K format like this camera has. The 4K has a 1.6 times crop, but other than that, the full frame sensor is fully supported. And for video modes, this camera really covers all the bases, or at least all the bases that I use. So we have 1080p 24 frames per second, which when this camera first came out, it was so hated because it did not have 1080p 24 FPS. And you could switch it over into PAL mode and get 25 FPS, and unfortunately we didn't have 24 or 25 in the NTSC format. But thankfully this was fixed in a firmware update, so 1080p 23.98 frames per second was added into NTSC. And this camera also shoots at 30 FPS 1080p, 60 FPS 1080p, which these three frame rates at 1080p I feel like is a really good basis for anybody looking to start making videos, or anybody that currently makes videos. That's just a really good foundation to cover. There's other frame rates that are really nice to have in a camera, but these ones are really nice to work with, and you can do a whole lot with them. So typically for me, in like a talking head scenario video like this, I'll either film in 24 FPS or 30 FPS 1080p. And when I'm doing slow motion B-roll, I'll up it to 60 FPS 1080p and then slow it down when it comes to the post-production process and doing the editing. So 60 FPS is great for that nice slow motion B-roll to incorporate into your videos. And as lastly, on the video modes, this camera does shoot in 4K 24 FPS, which is really another great bonus to have because a lot of people are wanting to film more in 4K. Personally, I keep most of my stuff 1080p, but it's really nice to have the 4K option. Unfortunately, with this camera and the other ones from like the EOS R from Canon, they do have a crop factor when you go into 4K, so you're going to get a 1.6 times crop. So that means when I switch it over to 4K, it's going to look like this. It's going to crop in a little bit. And as it crops in, the 24mm that I have on this camera actually becomes a 38mm focal length and some change. So that's where the crop factor comes in and tampers with your focal length. So now that we got some of the main specs out of the way, we're going to touch on a little bit of how this camera compares to the EOS R that I have. And there's a bunch of comparison videos already out there, so we're not going to go too deep into this, but for the most part, the main things to look out for is the Canon EOS R. You do get obviously some added features because it's obviously a much higher price point. Those features being, you get C-Log with this, so if you like filming in a log format and doing all the color grading in post-production, the EOS R is going to have it, the RP is not. The EOS R also has a high frame rate mode, which is 120 FPS, but unfortunately it's in 720p, so I don't use it too often, and the RP does not have the high frame rate mode. Little details on the body of the camera: the EOS RP does not have this LCD screen on top, which definitely isn't a deal breaker, but little features like that. And then another one is the EOS R has the sensor cover. Whenever you turn off the camera, it'll cover up the sensor, which is really nice, and unfortunately the RP does not have that. But I mean, as you purchase a camera in the lineup that is a little bit lower in price, you are going to lose some features, so those are some of the main ones. The EOS R is said to be weather sealed. The RP is said not to be. They feel very similar, but I'm sure there's portions of the camera that are sealed up a little bit better on the EOS R versus the RP. But that is pretty much it as far as the differences between the EOS R and EOS RP. But like I said, most of it's just features, and then you are going to have the photography differences too. It's going to shoot much faster when you're in burst modes. It's got more megapixels, which isn't a huge deal. Megapixels aren't everything, especially when you're talking over 25 megapixels for each of these cameras. So they're both great photography cameras. If you are doing a little bit more high-speed stuff, the EOS R is probably the way to go, as it does do a little bit better in performance when it comes to burst modes. Alrighty guys, so wrapping this up with a recap of why I think the EOS RP is a really strong option if you are in the market for a new DSLR or mirrorless camera here in 2021. So first off, this is a full frame mirrorless camera that you can purchase sub $1,000 if you get like a demo, refurbished, or used. You can usually scoop them up between $750 and $900 depending on where you can find them. Right now, if you purchase the body only from a retailer brand new, you're looking at right at $1,000. This camera contains all the core video specs that I look for, which is 1080p 24, 30, 60, and we also do have the addition of 4K 24, so it does get you into the realm of 4K. And a very underrated feature with this camera and the EOS R is they both do have digital image stabilization, which isn't native IBIS like a lot of people talk about, which is in-body stabilization. But the digital IS is pretty underrated, and I think it does help quite a bit. and it doesn't look too artificial, and it doesn't really tamper with your footage much. I have seen some IBIS footage in the past and how people don't really like using it even if their camera has it, and it's not too impressive. It actually looks very warpy and kind of looks like warp stabilizer in your camera. But that's in some cases, not all cases. I'm sure sometimes it looks really good as well. Alrighty guys, that is it for this video. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this gave you a pretty good idea on the EOS RP and what it's capable of, and how it might be one of the better options for a full frame mirrorless camera here in 2021. Like I mentioned earlier, it checks a lot of the boxes for me, and I'm sure it does for a lot of other people too, so it's definitely a good camera to consider. But thanks for watching guys. If you liked the video, make sure to give us a thumbs up, and if you want to see more tech related videos like this one, be sure to subscribe. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.